Hello, welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Kris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org, and today is November 11th, 2025. We're going to be talking more about shadow work, helping people get launched into the great work. And this episode is Episode 29, Shadow Work 27, Fear or Love, Part 12. So it's a continuation of what motivates us, the polarity of fear, the polarity of love. And specifically, this one's going to get into excuses that we have for not doing the great work. We're going to eventually get to that. So the Great Work Launchpad is an effort to try to get people launched into the great work as the image shows, and people can come on board and contribute to the topic at hand, or if they want to wet their feet, they could also, in addition to that, they could present a topic that maybe they have apprehensions of speaking in public or online, or don't know how to get things going online in terms of doing like a live broadcast where they can wet their feet, try it out here, and see how they do and take it further from there. Hey Brandon, how's it going?
Howdy. I'm doing well. How about you?
All right. Glad to have you back. Missed you last week.
Yeah, my sinuses, about an hour before the show, like my sinuses were just shit, and I just need to give my body some rest. So
Was that like allergies or a cold?
yeah, because still calling games for these tournaments, and it's getting cold, so been spending some late weekends in like 40 degree weather. So and I do suffer from like minor allergies, but they only last like a day, and then I'm fine. So it just happened to be last Wednesday, just happened to be that day. It is what it is.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, last week I did an episode on purists and arguments for or against, the people who have this, I guess, more of a purist mindset regarding things. It was related to a Corbett post on purist agorists, and criticizing people who aren't purist agorists. So I was talking about that related to morality too in other ways. And so, there's arguments for it, but the bottom line I was getting at, I think, was that whether you're a purist or not and you want to criticize people, it doesn't matter in terms of if you're actually doing stuff, if you're working towards the goal of ending evil. We're talking about the great work here. You can criticize people for not being as moral as you, and that's fine. Holding on, adhering to your principles and knowing where you stand is something worthy of being in that position. And even if you criticize others, they can do their work and you can do your work, and you don't need to unite with people, you don't need to do things with others, you don't need to like cooperate with them in some way, but you're still going to be doing the work as long as you're doing the actual work to try to end evil, end our enslavement. Then if you want to take up your position of your, I guess, moral high horse, and I don't like that expression, because if you're more moral, then you are more moral, and you can talk about it and you can criticize others. And if you're not looking to make allies or cooperative efforts, then if that's what you want to do, then hey, go for it. As long as you're doing other shit other than that, then I guess it's all good. As long as you're actually doing stuff that matters more than just criticizing other people.
Right. Yeah. If you're actually doing the work, that's really what matters. More. And yeah, one doesn't have to collab, do things with, anyone else. That may not be, the best choice, but if that's what the individual chooses to do, that's totally fine. It's always nice to collab with other people, because more voices, reach, how larger quantities. But if that's what the individual, chooses to do, then that's their choice. But as long as they're doing, how to work, you can still criticize, others to a degree, but, first criticize yourself. And if you're not doing, the true great work, then first off, you shouldn't be criticizing anyone else but yourself, you know. What's up, Jerry?
Hey, Jerry.
What's going on? Great points, Brandon. About criticizing others for not doing the great work.
Yeah, so this week is going to be on excuses. So excuses for not doing the great work, excuses for not doing shadow work, excuses, I guess, for not choosing that side of love, of true care, of care for truth to motivate you, not caring enough, that syntropic evolutionary force, and being more in the side of involution or stagnation, to not do things, inaction. So the excuses for not moving more towards the positive side and still staying somewhat in the negative side. So all the things you have as a reason, whatever reason you have, these are excuses for not starting the great work. These are all going to be based in fear, as we've been talking about for 11 previous episodes, all the dynamics of the fear versus love as what motivates us. And so it's not necessarily based in the emotion of fear of being, that you're afraid of something, but it's in that vein of these two polar opposite forces or tendencies that propel certain behavior forward or inhibit that type of behavior and leave you in the other polarity, either actively or in the stagnation aspect of not doing the positive side. So you're more in the negative side because you haven't worked on yourself enough to move yourself into that polarity of the positive side, which would be the love side, agape, love, care for yourself, care for others, care for moral truth. So that's the other side, is the involutionary side, the fear side. And one of the things people can ask themselves is, or try to think about, is to do great things instead of mediocre things in your life. And when you're on the path of the great work, that's when you're going to have a higher purpose, and you're not going to be more focused on the mediocre things of, I don't know, I'm not saying these things are bad necessarily, but someone could be totally focused on working out all the time, and they're viewing that as their pathway to self-improvement or self-betterment. They're just focusing on the physical health or eating right or something. I'm saying those things aren't bad, but the higher purpose is in trying to actualize your own freedom and the freedom of everyone else, because we're all in this together, the so-called law of one, where we're only going to achieve this by the overall aggregate being morally aligned so that we do obtain our true freedom. And so there's so many mediocre things in life that people pursue, especially in regards to entertainment or just being driven by comfort or pleasure, the pleasure trap. So there's all these mediocre things, and the great work is to do great things, to be in line with that direction of doing these great things in order to produce a great result, which is true freedom. Not that we're necessarily going to have it in our lives, but you're sacrificing of yourself, these other things that you'd prefer to do, in order to try to move forward the goal of actualizing our freedom and not being enslaved anymore. So we can ask people who are not actualized to that potential, they should ask themselves, why are you the way you are? why do you do the certain things that you do? Why do you take the time of your day and you're going to do this thing or that thing? You know, the entertainment, watch a movie, play a game, go hang out with friends, but never are you focusing on trying to fulfill the requirements for your own development to actually get into doing the great work of trying to create permanent, widespread content that can potentially affect and others, to bring a moral realization within themselves for them to gain and recognize and verify the moral truth in whatever content you're going to put out. Ultimately, as I've said, the pinnacle is the moral truth, and then there's peripheral stuff that you can do. All the shadow work stuff is that to get people towards understanding moral truth or the acceptance of it, rather than reject it and deny it and say that's impossible, it can't be like that, no, it's not like this, and moral is just relative, we all make it up. So there's a lot of baggage people have, and like not being able to think, that would be one of them, or they have to do work on themselves. So these are peripheral things. Ultimately, moral truth is the goal. So the things that they do, are some of them wrong? So why are you the way you are? Why do you do certain things that you do in your day? Are some of them wrong? Do you even know if some of these things are wrong? Do you want to know if they are wrong? And, you know, hopefully it's yes. A lot of people, I think, would be no, and they'd be lying to themselves a lot of people would be lying to themselves saying, yes, I'd want to know. And then when you tell them, well, then they'd come up with their excuses, their justifications, their denial, and rejecting it. So they're not even at the point of being able to answer, like, okay, yes, I'm doing this, so then why are you doing that thing? So if someone would be honest with themselves and being able to accept that they're doing something wrong, then they could ask themselves, well, why am I doing this that's wrong? And did you even choose to do these things, or were you conditioned to do these things? So that's another thing of the shadow work and self-reflection, introspection people need to do to figure out, like, these things that I'm doing, well, I'm just doing them because that's how I learned to do them. I'm just repeating things, and I haven't even reflected upon the reason for why I'm doing these things. So they're programmed and conditioned into people. And, you know, people can ask, are your thoughts really your own? And that's a deep one to contemplate about many of the things that we have in our lives and that we do, or the things that we think, the things we believe, the things we assert are true, are confident are true. So that's all part of the shadow work. And your shadow work is your own personal change. It's your journey to change and ultimately to advance morality from the position of you as an individual's actions. And part of that advancing morality is not just what I call M1 is to stop doing immorality level 1, but it's also M2, which is the advancement of morality is only going to be done by people teaching morality. If people are not teaching morality, the advancement of morality will not progress. Because let's face it, figuring this out on our own, none of us did it. We all gained information from other people who were teaching it, and then we became enlightened with that particular information that affected our lives greatly and changed us. And then we had to change ourselves. We are the ones doing the work, but other people did the work of outputting that information, that output part of the trivium, that wisdom part. And by their actions, we were able to modify our actions. And it's ultimately, we modify our actions, and then we also have to engage in new actions of engaging in that continual building up and reciprocity of putting out the information ourselves. But the stopping of the doing, the immorality, that's the first step before doing the next step of the great work. You have to do the work on yourself and do that personal change about your own actions to not engage in those wrong things, that you have to face the mirror, that self-reflection, gain that self-respect, that self-love, and that self-care to not want to do that anymore, to care more about morality than whatever you're gaining by continuing to do those wrong things. So that first part, the shadow work, is part of advancing the cause of true freedom and justice. You have to know the negatives are within you, or that you have those negative potentials, and you then choose to transcend them, to rise above them. So what has been put there for you to repeat as thoughts or actions? There's things that have been put into your mind that you believed in, behaviors that you repeated unquestioningly, and you're just going through them. So you have to ask yourself, what has been put into you that's making you think certain ways or act in certain ways? What conscious choices can you make for how to think and act differently? How can you remake yourself? That's alchemy. This is this inner work, this shadow work. That's the symbolism of the phoenix. You burn, you purify, and from the ashes you are reborn. And you can engage in that continual self-renewal. And what can you change to have more optimal outcomes in reality? And that's where the great work comes in, because the optimal outcome, that's that greater benefit to yourself and to others, that only comes about through adherence to morality. And the more people adhere to morality, the more optimal outcomes there are for a greater number of people. So first you do this yourself, on yourself, and then you work on changing others for them to do that same process that you effected on yourself. And that's done with the influence of moral philosophy. And that is done by creating content to increase the voice of truth overall. So shadow work is that work to identify and confront and transcend the things that are holding us back from the higher goal that we say we want to realize. And the higher goal, as I mentioned, that's that true freedom and justice. We're trying to advance that cause, and if you're not working on yourself, you're not doing that first inner work, that alchemical work, then you're not going to actually be able to advance the cause of that thing that everyone says they want, but they're not working towards it. Everyone wants freedom. Do you like freedom? Yeah, they like freedom. Do you like slavery? No, I don't like slavery. Well, everyone likes freedom. Everyone wants freedom. But, well, do you want to know how freedom's created? No, I'm not really interested. That's boring to me. Well, you're getting into philosophical thought. I just want to like things, I just want them to magically just happen to me and things like that. So I'll pass it around to you guys, and what do you got to say?
It's like no one wants to learn the rules of the game now. It's like no one wants to, learn the dynamics of how the game works and how it operates. But man, when you said if you were wrong, would you want to know about it? That's a very deep, powerful question that I'm going to start asking people. Because most people would say, yes, I would want to know. If they were wrong, well, then it's like, okay, well, you're wrong on a lot of things, and then you can prove it to you. So the thing is, once you realize you're wrong, then what are you going to do? Hell about that. And ultimately, what Chris is like mainly trying to point out is just basic problem solving skills. It's like the excuses for doing shadow work, the excuses for doing this kind of work can easily be, pinpointed and got, to the root cause factor with a little bit of problem solving skills, by simply sitting down, contemplating, your thoughts, jotting them down, and going through the basics, problem solving skills. You have a goal. Okay, what's holding you back? Okay, if you know what's holding you back, the what, when, where, why, how, and then, you go to your bubble diagrams, and then, you start doing all that stuff. And then the brain should be firing back off stuff that you should have learned, years and years ago to a degree. But, the rebuilding of the self, and you brought the whole alchemical process. And, if anyone is not familiar with the work you did on natural law and alchemy, should go check that out. But that's really what we are talking about is, we're all fractured to a degree. We're all traumatized. We're all broken, and we need to be healed. We need to be put back together. But the problem is, a lot of people think that they're fine in the way that they are. A lot of people don't realize that they're broken. That's the level of unawareness that they are at. They aren't even aware that they are broken, that they are fractured, that they are in a schism, that they are traumatized. And that right there is holding a lot of people back, in life and getting to the goals that they say they want. So you will hear a lot of people say, oh, I want to get involved in doing this kind of work. So it's like, okay, well, what's holding you back? What's preventing you? What's stopping you? What's slowing you down? What's retarding you from getting hell involved in this kind of work? Then people will come up with all of those, hell excuses. And then the main thing that should be asked is why? Why is it that those barriers are there? Because any barrier can be removed with enough care, enough willpower, enough force, enough effort, and enough sacrifice, and hell, enough time. So are you willing to remove those barriers that are hindering you from getting to the goals that you say how you want to do? And hopefully no one is listening to this for the first time. You should go back and listen to all or majority of the previous episodes to get an amalgamation of what's been said, because this is a progression. And yes, there is a lot of repetition like in these shows, which is kind of, I'm sure Chris does that deliberate, because I do it very deliberately too, because repetition is one of the best means of how learning. But you know the rebuilding of the self and putting those pieces back together, because basically it's no different than a puzzle. We have pieces scattered all over, and we have to put those pieces held back together. And that's really what held the whole purpose of all of the mystery schools was, and of course alchemy just said in different words. But until the self is put back together and healed, like when it comes to truly building, truly, building a world in freedom, natural law, like the positive things that most human beings say they want, it's just a dream, because shadow work is a requirement, in order for us to, get to that step of freedom. Because without the shadow work aspects, most people are not going to have the courage to even start to speak out. Most people are not going to have, have the courage to actually stand on something and give themselves up to a greater cause. So that's why they'll just sit back and cower in fear, and like hide behind the real individuals who are on the battlefield, and they'll stay on the sidelines. They'll stay in the shadows cheering people on, and like pretending as though they're doing something, when in fact you may not be at that level two aspect, but you're still aren't fully there. You're still a halfwayer, you're still a half-asser, because you're aren't fully engaged in the great work. What's going on, Jerry?
Yeah, you made some great points, Brandon. And let's see what I can add. Yeah, excuses. I mean, one thing I've learned recently is, say, the people that understand this information are capable of doing the great work. So, as Brandon mentioned, what is holding them back? And that's why the shadow work is required to get that answer. I mean, you already know the answer, as Brandon mentioned. We've all been traumatized to a degree. So, sort of listing those traumas and then dealing with the one holding you back the most, start off with that, gain some momentum. And at the end of the day, you'll do this if you really care about ending slavery. It's not a wishy-washy dream. It's no. If you really care, then you will put in the work to create content and inspire others to awaken. So excuses are not going to change the condition of slavery. Action will. teaching objective morality, natural law. Those are the things required. And yeah, I mean, it's just so easy for people to be led astray by the mainstream media and all these just self-gratifying things out there. And I think repetition is key, as you mentioned, Brandon. It's hammering the message, and it takes two to kind of tango. So the person learning has to really be dedicated and take some notes. Maybe that will help to understand the message better.
And speaking of Jerry, did you publish that article last week?
I did. I actually posted it in the YouTube comments section. So I should have sent it to
Okay.
you.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't notice. I didn't get a notification that someone commented on it. Okay. I guess I could check that out. If you want to post it in the chat of this stream, I'll flash it by
Okay.
the bottom, and people, whoever's watching it, can go check that out. So that was the one you did on. Oh crap! Was it solipsism that you read last week? I forget.
No, that was
What was
the
it?
2 ways humanity.
Oh yeah, the 2 ways humanity's fooled.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let me go ahead. I actually started writing the solipsism one. Man, too important of a topic. Too important. And yeah, it's just people really fall for this stuff, and that's why I cannot wait to publish this. But
cool. Well, looking forward when you have it done. You can read it out like you did.
It seems like YouTube is being weird with the comments because I didn't see anything under a video.
Yeah, normally I get notifications and I never got anything.
Oh, hell, YouTube is, I mean, I shouldn't say YouTube. I mean, the AI is ridiculous, now on that platform.
They don't let links? So. You can't post links anymore?
It depends. Yeah, but like they're getting stricter because,
all right, send it to me on Telegram, Jerry. Go open Telegram. I'll put it in the chat and then I'll put it in the bottom here. So.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So, yeah, I'll continue with what we're talking about. We're talking about shadow work, right? So this is all about. The whole point here, since episode 3, that's what we're talking about, shadow work. Episode 3 of the Great Work Launchpad. We're on shadow work 652 now. No, I'm kidding. I forget what it is. 25, 26, 27. What is it? 27. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just gonna get this here, copy, go and paste it. They're gonna let me paste it because it's my channel. That's right. It's too long. If you watch the video, you can go to the show the replay chat or whatever, and then you can click in there. All right, I'll add it when I upload this video so people can get it. Yeah. I didn't think it would cut it off because normally it shows the whole text, and here it's just like, well, it's a link. I'll just cut it off. I'm not going to show it to you. All right, bastards. I copied the link, and even in the chat it cut it off. So, it's YouTube that cut it off. Those bastards.
Yeah, like I say, like.
No, I cut it off again. Anyways. Those bastards, man. They're like, no,
you can't share information. Yeah.
No. You can click on it and it might work. Yeah, but we're not going to show you the whole link. Anyways, I'll take that off the screen since there's no point. Yeah, so talking about people say they want a goal, but you got to do the work to realize it. and they say they want true freedom, or they just say they want freedom because they don't even know what true freedom is, and they already think they have freedom. They don't even understand what true freedom is. But some people have come across this type of work, been through Mark Passio, you understand what true freedom is, and they're not contributing to create that possibility because they're not contributing to other people's understanding of true freedom and what those requirements are for how to create true freedom. So in that case, all these people, thousands of people who've been through Mark Passio's work, how effective are you in helping true freedom to become the condition of the world? You're not effective at all. Because if you understand the law of freedom, then the only way true freedom comes about is by moral alignment. So your behavior aligns with objective morality as opposed to being in opposition to it. That requires that's exercising conscience. You need to have conscience, which is the definitive objective knowledge of the difference between right and wrong behavior. That means you have to have that knowledge. So people need to have that knowledge because they don't currently have it. So they can't make the choice of choosing right over wrong because they don't actually know the difference between right and wrong. So they need to get that knowledge. And if you're not helping with all those peripherals, or ultimately the objective of getting that moral truth out there, then you're not being effective in helping true freedom become the condition of the world that you say you want it to be. Because all these people, that's why it's the quote truth and quote freedom movement, because they don't even know how to create freedom. They have no clue. And if you can understand that you're not very effective, you're not effective. Not even not very effective, you're not effective because you're not advancing that possibility, because it takes information in. That's the whole aspect of the trivium in our consciousness. If information doesn't come in that can modify our behavior, then our behavior isn't going to magically modify itself. People aren't going to just have the source code of the universe or whatever, all the information just come into them, be bombarded, and all of a sudden I get it. Oh, okay, I can change my behavior now. No, this has taken a long time in human history. It could have been around for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Who knows? And it's just not widespread, and it's, it gets pieced together and transmuted over generations, and then some people are fortunate enough to piece it together, like Mark Passio, and he put it out. So there's very few who understand it in the world, and there's even less people who are teaching it. So how effective are you? You're not effective. And why aren't you? Why aren't you effective? Why aren't you doing these teachings? So probably that things are still holding you back from your potential to become an agent of truth, an agent of moral truth, a causal agent in the polarity of agape love, true care for truth, to bring forward what is right and good and moral in the world. So things are holding you back from that potential. And those are the negative things that are limiting you in that polarity of fear, that involution. And you're accepting them as okay, probably. And just saying that is just not doing the shadow work, and it's not going to get you to the goal if you're just accepting them. So you have to be honest about it and not accept it and be like, okay, yes, I'm not effective. Why aren't I? I have these excuses. So be honest about it, and then you can work on, even that first level. You're not even working on the skills or the knowledge to do the great work. You got to work on the excuses that's even preventing you from moving forward. So it's not that you don't have access to technology. So we have the technology. So it could be that you don't know how to use it. But then just saying, oh, well, I don't know how to do this. Well, that's just an excuse that's holding you back from learning how to do it. You have a computer. You have a phone. you have a voice or you have fingers and you can type. If you're mute, well, you can't speak, but you can type. So there's different ways to get the information out, to creating that content that's permanent and can have a widespread access to many people on the planet. Most people have a phone and point it at yourself and probably have an internet. Why would you have a phone? Why would you have a modern smartphone without an internet connection or a way to get on the internet with like Wi-Fi or something? So you got internet access somehow at some point in your day. You got a phone that can record, you're able to recharge it. So you can get started even from that low point. You can not be on the net, you can record a video, save it, and then you go to your Wi-Fi hotspot and then you upload it. You can start from there. And it's a very bare place to start from, but you can start from there and then grow and work from there and get better tech eventually to do a better thing. But, even that, if you're popular somehow, you don't even need the tech. So many people are more popular than anyone making professional content out there, and they just point the camera at themselves and talk, and they get, hundreds of thousands of views because whatever bullshit they're talking about, people enjoy it. And so who knows? So yeah, probably not going to happen when you're talking about philosophical related things because people are just idiocracy and they don't care about that. So point the camera, record, say stuff about what's going on, say something, that's that great work level 1, as I call it, the effects. You could talk about the effects, or you could amp it up to the greater philosophical, talk about the causes and the solution to the evil. Because you talk about the effects, you're not talking about the solution. So again, how effective are you if you're just talking about the effects? Well, you're effective in bringing awareness to about the problem, but you're not effective in bringing true freedom. You're not effective in manifesting true freedom because you're not talking about the solution. That's that causal level. None of the effects are the solution. So there's, this chasm between the goal people say they want and what they're doing to get the goal, the will that they're applying to get that goal. So there's this middle ground where there's things that they're currently doing that isn't getting to that goal, which is creating true freedom, right? So anything but applying the will to do the great work is not getting you to the goal of true freedom being realized, of having more justice being effectuated, or no injustices being created, or minimal injustices, and then rectifying them and making them right. So anything but doing this work of trying to get people to understand these things, work on themselves, do the shadow work, etc., is not going to get that goal realized. And that's why I say talking about the effects. There's so many people in the truth and freedom movement, they talk about the effects. And yes, that's necessary, as I've mentioned in my morality presentation, to be aware of the problem. Because you're going to hear about a solution, but if you don't know the problem, you're not going to care about, what is this? What is this, the solution? What's the solution for? I don't get it. So you got to be aware there's a problem. You got to want to have a solution to the problem. There's a problem. You're like, okay, I don't like this problem. I don't want it here. What's the solution? And that's where you get into the causal domain. So there is a place for these people doing this repetitive, talking about the effects. Flavor of the week. There's always new bullshit coming on. You can talk about all the problems, but it's not the real solution. It's a step to get there, but it's not talking about the solutions. You're not going to apply any solutions that way. You're just making people aware so that they care that there's a problem, to then take themselves to higher levels of understanding. So there's specific barriers to initiating yourself into the great work. You need to care more. That's one of the big ones. That's that fire from within that you need to actualize, where you can care about the problem and then care about applying a solution. And then until you figure out that moral knowledge is needed to be taken in by people, and that's what they need to receive, and you're going to help in that effort, then you haven't figured out that that's what needs to be done. And you need to care about wanting to do that. So you can care about there's a problem, but you need to care about the solution. So that's the why. Why do you even need to do the great work? Well, do you care about the problem? All right, you want the problem to go away, the problem of our enslavement, these injustices, then that's why you need to do the great work. And so there's a lot of reasons why these barriers are reasons for people not initiating themselves into the great work. And not caring is one of them. That's like one of the core ones, the foundational ones, at the root cause is just not caring enough. So that's that shadow work that people need to do is like, we've talked about it a bunch of times. Why don't you even care about your own enslavement and wanting to end it? So you need to at least be selfish in that respect, to activate yourself, to care about yourself in that respect. But these cons are all fear-based. That apathy is in that fear side of the spectrum. And these are reasons that people come up with for why they have not started. It's an excuse to not start. And some of these other fears can be about their personal characteristics, like they're not smart enough, or not good enough, not motivated enough, not skilled enough. And, these things can be overcome. And maybe you aren't not good enough and you recognize that. So then that's back to the shadow work is, well, how can you make yourself better? How can you become good enough where you actually develop the self-care, the self-worthiness, and the self-love, where you value yourself and you think you're worthy enough to do the great work to help bring more morality into the world. Because maybe you don't even care about yourself enough to even get to that point. So these things are allegedly lacking some inherent quality. Like, oh, you're not smart enough. That's the inherent quality of intelligence or of good. Oh, you're born evil or something. Or you're not motivated. Oh, you're too lazy. You're inherently lazy. You were born lazy. You're not skilled. Oh, you can't learn new things. You're inherently just incapable of learning anything. So you're believing that you can't develop these things that you think you lack, and that you can't overcome this lack and gain that thing that you think you don't have. And it might be true that you don't have it, and then you need to do the work to do it, to gain that skill or whatever that you're lacking, not thinking you're good enough or not smart enough. So you are capable. The truth is that you are capable of gaining more of whatever quality, that X quality that you think that you don't have enough of. So it could be that you actually don't have enough of it and you need to work on yourself to gain more of it. Or it could just be another bullshit lie that you tell yourself just so that you don't get started, and that you are smart enough and you are good enough and you are motivated enough and you are skilled enough, but you're just lying to yourself and telling yourself that so that you have a reason to not do it. So you can gain more of these things if you don't actually have them. But you haven't prioritized putting that time and attention into growing that X quality so that you can then get to the point where you can do the great work. It might be true that you don't have it right now, but you can work on it. And that is the truth. The truth is that you can work on it. And if you do have it, then stop lying to yourself about not having it. And if you don't have it, then stop bullshitting yourself that you can't develop it. So put in the time. So if you're not good enough, well, then you need to work on becoming good enough. Stop doing those immoral things if you're not good enough. Or you could be thinking that you're not truly good because you're not doing the great work, because you're not engaging in that aspect, that polarity of love, of evolution, of trying to bring goodness and rightness and morality into the world. You're not part of bringing that forward. So then you could be like, oh yeah, well then that would make you good enough. If you start doing it, then you're going to be more good than you were before when you were not doing it, because now you're part of that force, that energy of everyone who's doing this, part of that, trying to bring that into existence, or trying to create that into existence that doesn't exist yet. So stop doing those first level immoralities, those primary immoralities, and work on that. And then you could be good enough to start doing the great work. Because if you are doing those things, if you're engaging in one of the primary 7 violations, then yeah, you probably shouldn't be doing the great work, because then you're like a hypocrite telling people to not do things that you're still doing. You can't be teaching about morality and trying to get other people to be more moral when you're not being moral yourself. You could still do it, but it's like it's a corruption, it's a contradiction within yourself. You're not in unity consciousness, you're going to be in disunity. You're going to be full of shit yourself, and if anyone finds out, then they're going to be like, look at this poser telling me to do this when they're not even doing it themselves. So, that whole the people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, I think that applies here. So yeah, make sure you shattered your own glass house and you're not in the glass house anymore before you're going to tell people about the moral failures or the ways they need to morally self-actualize. All right, I'll pass it around to you guys.
There was an old internet gaming saying back in the days, get good. People need to get good, man. Not just get good and knowing about, have morality, but get good at, get good at the requirements when it comes to doing this kind of work. Like you brought up the whole tech stuff. A lot of people started off, small. It's no different, than when you're doing the shadow work. Like you start off small. You take those small baby steps. Well, when doing this kind of work, you may not have how the latest technology. You may not know much about technology, but like Kris said, you have a phone, and if you have a phone, then you have somewhat a connection to the internet or a hotspot, Wi-Fi. So you can get started there. And that's how I started. Then with progression, with time, you can get good and get better. You can get better, better equipment. You can get good and get better at your, understanding. You can get good at and better, like at how you present. It's just all about the mindset. And that's really what we are talking about is, do you have your mindset, um, fertile, and nutrient dense and ready for new things to come in. So you can't get good and learn, like how to do this kind of stuff and, get over your fears and hell excuses without the right mindset. You have to want to learn. You have to want to grow. You have to want to get better. Like you really have to want and desire these things. You can't just say it. You have to go all in. You can't half-ass it. You have to be that real warrior, and have that right mindset to say, hey, I'm going to get good at what I'm doing. Or, like I want to get better, forget this. And, knowledge in and of itself isn't powerful, because if you're inside of a prison, you can know you're inside of a prison all day, but if you know how to escape, if you know how to get out of that prison, then you are the one who has true power, because the guards and the warden aren't going to like you very much because you actually have applied knowledge on how to escape the prison. So when it comes to this kind of knowledge, you can have all this knowledge all day, but if you're not actually applying it in the real world and actively engage in health education of others and trying to teach it to make sure that this knowledge stays flowing, then what good is that knowledge that you have, and what good are you? You're not very good at all, because you can know something, but if you don't act upon it, if it's not hell applied, then it's nothing. It just stays here. So we really have to shift our mindsets, because again, like that's really what we are talking about. People are in this state of learn, for helplessness, to where this whole saying, you can't teach a dog, her new tricks. That shit needs to be thrown out, the window, because you're never too old to learn something. You can always learn something. There's always new information that can be learned. There's always new information that's come to the table, and we have to be willing to soak and absorb, the information, then run it through the trivium and not just believe it, but make sure that it holds weight and it holds substance, and therefore we can integrate it. you know and sadly that's not what enough people have, and that's what we are trying to encourage. This is what we are trying to influence, by leading by example, and trying to show others, like, hey, it can be, you up here. It doesn't have to be, Chris or me or, Theo or, Jerry. You can be the person talking. You can be the person, help present at, at funnel. You can be the individual, who's doing a podcast. That can be you. Because I remember 10, 10 years ago when I was listening to Chris's work, I never thought that I would be, 10 years later, having these conversations with him. I never envisioned that I would be doing this kind of work, but you have to get through all of those barriers that are holding you back and those fears, because the question is, why aren't you the one who is doing what we are doing now? Why aren't you doing it? And ask yourself that, had a deep question, and don't lie. Don't lie to yourself. What's going on, Theo?
Yeah, man. What's good, guys? Well, first of all, thanks, Chris, for doing the show as always. And yeah, that's a great way for people to participate, even if they're not doing their own shows, like you just mentioned, Brandon. Yeah, like I think to really kind of initiate yourself into doing the like great work, like we mentioned, like the digital realm, in a real way, like that, like with your own channel, like with full on, dedication and all that. It just takes kind of inner work, inner motivation, and like true care as well. And I think also there's different ways to do it as well, though. So like for me, it comes out more like in my music. So like I have a passion for music, so I started incorporating natural law based, great work kind of ideas into my lyrics with my music. So my latest albums all have that in them. So if people ever listen to them, they get to, you know, um, be seated with a lot of those ideas that we talk about, morality and natural law and all that. So yeah, I mean, there's different ways to do it, and like if one is not so comfortable in front of the camera, like me, I was not so comfortable, and I still am not super comfortable in front of the camera. But like not everyone kind of wants to be a superstar in this way. Like some people wants to be more doing more artistic things, like I just mentioned, and whatever way also doing it in real life as well. So I guess like in regards to excuses, just make sure you're clean with yourself. Like the what is the first one? Don't lie to yourself, right? One of the first steps to initiation, right? So like make sure you're really good with yourself with like are you saying excuses, or is this maybe there's a valid reason why you're not doing it this way? Like like I just said, maybe you want to do it in a different way. But if you're not doing it at all, then we have a problem, obviously. And if you're a hypocrite, if you're still working for the government while at the same time you have a podcast about natural law, like I know some people are like that, then it's kind of yeah, you're just divided within, and it's not helping. Even if you really say the things that we talk about, but again, you're not really living it. It kind of goes through the cracks, and people can feel the energy, and they can realize that you're a hypocrite. You can't hide it. It's you can't run away from yourself. So yeah, again, I think this requires just meditation. This requires inner work, shadow work. This is what this series is about with Chris, right? It's shadow work. Like I think it's really good that he keeps adding the parts to the same subject, because this those subjects are really not well understood and well worked on and integrated by almost anyone, right? Like if you're someone who's really sincere with yourself, you don't lie to yourself, you're really aligned with your lifestyle and everything. You're not just, you don't just know all the things we talk about. You're actually practicing them. You're putting them into practice. You're incorporating them into your being. You're in the 1%. You're the in the 1% in in the network, like in the natural community. You're in the 1%. Like forget about humanity. Like you're in the 0.00%. Like if you're like totally, enlightened within, like not enlightened in some kind of woo-woo way, like a guru way, like just enlightened in regards to your own shadows, right? Like you don't really have shadows. Maybe that's impossible, but like your shadows are enlightened. Let's say you're aware of them, you're in control of them, you have internal monarchy, and when you really reach this this kind of stage in your inner work, and you're in a higher enough level, then you can really do the great work in a way that will resonate and will be sincere. Anyway, that's what I got.
All right, Jerry. No, not adding
Okay.
anything. All good.
All right, I figured. No, great points made. What can I add?
That's all good. You don't need to. I was just waiting, seeing if you had something there.
No, I'll definitely share something. I'm just thinking out loud because I don't have anything prepared. But I mean, you did say, Theo, something about you have to live it, right? Because if I show up here and I'm not living it, I'm just gonna look like a jackass, and the message is not gonna get through. But if I'm living it, literally thinking about this and working towards the goal, then my message will have more weight. So that's the whole goal, is for me to show up here authentic. And I definitely hear what you're saying, Kris, and I'm applying this to myself first and foremost. I'm thinking I'm not fucking doing I'm not doing much at all. Like I can do a lot more. So I'm taking all these mental notes, then I'm going to process it, be real with myself. Why am I not doing better? Why am I not doing more? And then another thing I thought of was I'm going to use a baseball analogy, which is okay, Babe Ruth, right? He played, and just because he's great, does that mean that there's no room for others to be great at baseball? It's like whoever's watching this and isn't active can be great and help achieve freedom faster. So that's what I have.
That's a good point to end things on. That people can look at. Mark Passio did it, and whoever else has done it, or whatever topic. And someone already spoke about this. Oh well, I'm not going to talk about it. I've already talked about this before, like at least 2 times in this shadow work ongoing series with the Great Work Launchpad. Is that people have this fixation on novelty, on the new thing, and the great work isn't about finding something new to talk about. It's about talking about the eternal truths which don't change. So you're going to be repeating. You're going to be repeating what other people have said. You're going to be repeating yourself. So people have to get over that. And it's, like you said, just because, Mark Passio did it. Oh, well, I don't have to do it. Oh, they got it. They got it. Like Mark Passio says, I don't got this. We don't got this. No one person has this. It needs more people. This effort that we're doing, the end goal, it needs more people getting involved. So yeah, definitely can't just be looking at other people and being like, wow, they did it so well. Oh, I can't live up to them. I won't be able to do it as good as them. So what? start where you're at and learn how to do it better. Take them as an example of a level that you can try to reach and maybe even surpass at some point as you work on it and work on your craft and go forward with that. So we'll end it there, and we'll continue next week with more about this excuses stuff. Yeah, and I got my Passio, my awesome Passio quote to send us off on.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
That's right. Listen to Mark, everybody. Get the fuck out there so that this world isn't so much of a hellhole.
I need that on a 10-hour loop. I need that one phrase on a 10-hour loop.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's funny. It's got that dark comedy, for us at least, who are in this.
Yeah.
And it's that good kick in the ass to get started. It's that harsh truth that people, the soft people don't want to hear. And those who are ready for it will appreciate it, because that'll be the kick in the ass to realize, yeah, I need to get out there so this world isn't such a goddamn hellhole. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for showing up. Maybe see you next week. We'll continue with Fear of Love 13, I think it'll be, and then we'll Excuses 2. And yeah, we'll continue with getting down to these excuses so people can stop using them and work on overcoming these excuses, these limiting factors that inhibit their potential to actualize the freedom they say they want in the world. So have a good evening.